Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about rewards for your players, and how this gets increasingly more challenging the higher level you go. I recently dealt with this. I have players who I had one player reach 20th level in my Strixhaven campaign. That campaign had three campaigns. That series, that is really a Dungeons and Dragons campaign series. It had a student campaign, an adventurer campaign, and a professor campaign, and it went from level 1 all the way to level 20, which is, it's a big arc, right? And because of that, I realized what are actual meaningful rewards in Dungeons and Dragons, right? Now, a lot of dungeon masters don't deal with this problem because what they do is they insist that their player characters are dirt farmers, right? Like, they're like, my story's important, your character's going to get nothing or close to nothing. Maybe someday you'll have a +2 sword, right? And one of the ways that a lot of dungeon masters deal with this is they're like, hey, I control the whole world here. You have one person in the entire world, but I'm going to make sure you're a dirt farmer for the entirety of this campaign, right? And you're always going to suck compared to even a fraction of my non-player characters. You'll still suck, right? Like, and it's cruel, but you get a lot of control freaks who seek out the dungeon master slot, and it can be really challenging, right? So one of the things is I've been in this position, and we were ramping characters up from level 1 to level 20, and when we hit level 15, it got crazy, right? Like it really got very outlandishly difficult to control because I give things out. I want players to be rewarded for being at the table, and at this point they had reached a point where they had they had everything they needed, right? So yeah, this is really interesting. So I just watched this film, and it was called the 3,000 Years of Eternal Longing. 3,000 years of yearning, right? And it's a story of a djinn and trying to grant 3 wishes so it could be returned to the djinn world, right? And the whole film is about this question of, what if a person is content? What if they don't want to wish for anything? And that's what happens when you hit 15th level. So this is really a question of 15th level. So once you get player characters to 15th level in Dungeons & Dragons, they have everything they need. How are you going to continue to reward them? And here's my learnings, right? This is the issue, right? So the first thing I did was I got rid of attunement slots, right? So basically, they were Strixhaven professors, and I said that their letter of acceptance from Strixhaven meant that they could be attuned to as many items as they wished. And the only new limitation were literally the slots they could hold. So 1 ring on each hand. You can have a necklace. You can have a sword. You can have a magical sword. You can have a magical bow. You can have a magical helmet, right? But your body becomes the physical container for how many accoutrements you can get on you. And even there, you have a bag of holding, but items in the bag of holding really aren't doing you any good. They're not active. So your body becomes your limitation. So first thing I did was, so if you're going to reward players and you're at the top tier of Dungeons and Dragons, right? Here's the stuff that matters. First of all, you can get rid of all uncommon and common magic items. They don't matter. They're too small to matter, right? So rare and very rare magic items still matter, right? And you want to allow the players you want to get rid of the attunement. You want to give a magical narrative reading. By the way, weak dungeon masters say, oh, well, I'm just going to change the rule, right? You don't change Dungeons & Dragons rules outright. You don't change rules as written, okay? You give a narrative reason why that rule is no longer relevant to your players, right? That allows the story to flow forward and the rules as written to remain in place. That is good dungeon mastering. Just being like, well, we're going to ignore attunement slots. That's a sign that you are under a weak dungeon master, right? So first of all, rare and very rare magic items matter, right? And so One of the ways that my players would get rare and very rare magic items is they would take them off of enemies, and they also had access to the dragon hordes at that were at Strixhaven, right? So they literally had between the player who was lowest on our lowest skilled player had 5 very rare magic items, and our top players had up to 20 rare and very rare magic items. The next thing that matters on the wish scale, like what really is going to drive the needle for players who are at 15th level? Well, attribute scores, right? It's a big deal, and there's lots of slots to get filled, right? They're all at +1, +2. Maybe one of their maxed out stats are at +4, +5, right? But one, trust and believe, they want to get at a +6, a +7. There's different ways to get there, and they want to have that across 3 to 5 of their attributes, right? And so there's lots of room for growth in the attribute slot, the +2s, right? Because +1s don't matter. Like, you don't get when you go from 18 to 20, that's a +4 or +5. So I'm talking pluses on the attributes itself, the physical attributes of strength, dexterity, wisdom, strength, dexterity, and constitution, and then the mental attributes of intelligence, charisma, and wisdom. Okay. All right. So attribute pluses are very real, and they matter to players. The next one is proficiencies, right? And that is a ladder where your players are really, when they're getting to 15th, 20th level, you're looking at them getting very close, if not all the way to every proficiency. And it matters. It is a move the needle reward that you can give that matters, okay? And then that's about it. Right, you have proficiencies, you have attribute scores, you have rare and very rare magic items, and then there's a few other things. Followers matter to some players, but not all. I had one where his follower became a major part of the story. I gave a follower to another player. They never used him, never interacted with him, and I just had that non-player character slip off into the darkness, because they didn't matter, right? So followers can matter, and then also keeps, right? Like castles, keeps, that kind of thing. That can be one more, and maybe titles. But that's it. That's what really moves the needle at the high end, right? And it can be a real juggling match, right? Like it can be really, and you really have this same issue, right? The movie 3,000 Years of Longing. 3,000 Years of Yearning, I think, with Idris Elba and Tilda Swinton, dealt with this. Like, how do you reward someone who is content? And your 15th to 20th level characters are going to be content, and you will have this exact issue, right? So that is my advice for handling it. Those are the only things that are going to matter to a 15th, 20th level character. Have you been here? Have you dealt with this problem? I'd love to hear how you handled it. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.